They told you compassion was the highest form of intelligence, a pure light, a moral north. And yet you feel something colder behind the warmth, an accounting, a rhythm to mercy, a pattern to pity. You start noticing that compassion arrives right on schedule, like a well-timed season. The appeal that appears when attention is abundant, the crisis that crests when donations are highest, the slogan that blooms exactly when outrage is ripe. The timing is immaculate, the feeling is real, the harvest is engineered. You begin to see what most never will. Emotion flows, and someone built the riverbanks. They mapped your empathy with the accuracy of a cartographer, named its tributaries, guilt, pity, urgency, tribal pride, and diverted them into reservoirs where returns compound. Do good, they say, and yes, do good. But the system sells even that back to you, wrapped in virtue and priced by urgency. You are moved. You give. They count. Here's the part no one dares to admit. Suffering has an economy. Pain turns heads. Heads turn to screens. Screens turn to markets. Markets turn to custodians. Those custodians are polite and credentialed. They never lie outright. They curate. They select. They design the angle, the voice, the cadence, so that your compassion arrives in a lane they own. The product is hope. The margin sits upstream, and in that silence, the truth whispers. You've noticed the paradox. The larger the campaign, the smaller the structural change. You're shown the wound, never the weapon. You are taught to bless the bandage, not study the blade. A system can keep its hands clean by cultivating your heart. The industry of mercy is not a conspiracy. It is a competence, a discipline, the ability to capture soft feeling and bind it to hard incentives. The technique is not new. It is older than coin, but our tools are sharper now, our predictions more precise, our sentiment, graphs more revealing than any oracle's bones. But what if compassion is not removed? What if it is repurposed? This is the Machiavellian turn most fear to take. They think coldness means cruelty. It does not. It means calibration. It means separating sentiment from structure. So your kindness stops feeding the very machine that manufactures the need for kindness. It means learning who sits at the gate where feeling becomes funding, and posting your vigilance there, not at the spectacle where grief is staged like theatre. And in that silence, the truth whispers. You will be told this is cynical. It is not. It is sober. The sober see that pity can be priced, and that price will not be advertised. They notice that the most emotional language appears whenever the least structural question is permitted. Urgency, community, resilience. Words that sound virtuous and spend like currency. Words that move a crowd away from power and toward platitudes. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Emotion without a ledger becomes someone else's leverage. Here's the darker truth. The market for compassion rewards appearances, not outcomes. Appearances are cheap. Outcomes are expensive. So you will be sold the former while being promised the latter. A miracle of branding occurs. Metrics of warmth stand in for metrics of change. The applause is loud. The arithmetic is quiet. And in that silence, the truth whispers. The awakening is not gentle. You realize your feelings are not worthless. They are priceless, which is why they are for sale. From this moment forward, you practice cold mercy. Precision over performance, questions over slogans, contracts over claims. You don't harden your heart, you guard it. You don't extinguish compassion, you remove its leash. And when you are asked to give, you ask first, who profits from my pity? Who converts my grief? Who issues the stories that tell me where to look? When the answers appear, leverage changes hands, not by noise, By noticing, you think narratives are accidental. You think the story that reaches you is the story that happened. But the path from event to meaning is a hallway of mirrors, and at each mirror stands an architect. They polish the angles. They sand the edges. They choose which light to leave on. The result is not a lie, it is a choice. The choice does not belong to you. And yet, the truth is darker. The most effective narratives are not invented. They are selected. The trick is selection with timing. A single image can price labor lower than any law. A single headline can turn wage theft into efficiency. A single testimonial can launder austerity as discipline. You do not need censorship when you have curation. You do not need force when you have framing. The crowd will march to the drum that flatters their goodness and absolves the system that uses it. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Observe how the moral vocabulary is monopolized. The powerful speak humility like it's a dialect. They perform modesty while composing empires. They rehearse hardship from a stage with a private exit. The audience is moved by proximity to vulnerability, not by proximity to power. This is by design. If your attention faces the performance of pain, it cannot examine the machinery of consolidation. The show becomes the shield. But what if the story refuses to be sentimental? What if it is exact? The architects dread specifics. Specifics expose seams. Who owns the enterprise that donates the medicine? Who controls the debt instruments that monetize the rebuilding? Who benefits when community partnerships replace wage guarantees? Who writes the criteria by which success will be declared? The answers are not poetic. They are signatures. They are contract clauses. They are quiet like gravity, ever present, almost never named. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Understand the psychology. Your limbic brain moves before your logic arrives, faces before facts, symbols before systems. This is not your fault. It is your design. The architect's advantage is speed. They get to your feeling first and seat it in a chair facing the wrong stage. Once seated, thought becomes a negotiator, not a judge, bargaining with a story already installed. And so you find yourself speaking wisely about symptoms while the cause leaves by a private door. Here's the part no one dares to admit. Pity can be redirected. When pity is redirected from structures to individuals, exploitation gains a veil. The rich become heroes for promising to mitigate the disasters their capital incentivizes. The company becomes a savior for offering aid where it denies wage. The politician becomes a visionary for reducing the harm of a policy they authored. The narrative is airtight because it rhymes with your desire to be good. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Your task is not to hate them. Hate is a leash. Your task is to see the hand that selects the frame, to see the quiet craft of the headline, to see how one anecdote is allowed to stand in for 1,000,000 lives because the anecdote is photogenic and the 1,000,000 lives are messy. Seeing is slow. It has no viral hook. It pays in comprehension, not applause. This is why so few purchase it. This is why those who do become hard to use. Emotion is not ethereal. It is a commodity with a market, volatility, and arbitrage. Fear is the most liquid. It sells fast. Guilt is durable. It stores well and can be reissued. Pride is seasonal. It rallies around victories and flags. Hope is the rarest. When scarce, it commands a premium. Those who understand this do not need to own the factories. They only need to own the exchanges where sentiments are priced. You begin to recognize the trades. A sudden crisis, natural or engineered, triggers an issuance of impact vehicles and resilience bonds. The vocabulary is polished. It tastes like benevolence. But the mechanics are old. Catastrophe feeds credit. Credit feeds control. If you can collateralize recovery, you can own the path between despair and normal. Ownership there is equity in the human need to breathe. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Here's the part no one dares to admit. The most profitable empathy is the kind that never fixes root causes. It must keep needing itself. A healing thee. At end's demand is bad business. Better to sponsor the wound, trademark the bandage, and rent the road back to safety. That rent can be money, or it can be obedience, or it can be quiet. But what if you refuse spectacle? What if you demand the ledger? The economy of tears cannot tolerate audits. Audits replace emotion with sequence, and sequence reveals who converts grief into yield. You will be told this is unfeeling. It isn't. It is adult. A parent counts doses, not slogans. A builder specifies load, not hope. A strategist measures flows, not feelings. The few who rise do not go colder than human. They go clearer than useful. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Remember the conversion rates. Fear buys compliance at a discount. Guilt buys silence wholesale. Pride buys loyalty on margin. Easy to call, easy to crash. Hope, especially rationed hope, buys time. And time is the one commodity the rich cannot print. So they harvest yours. They ask for patience when they mean delay. They ask for unity when they mean consent. They ask for trust when they mean surrender. If you understand the dictionary, you will stop trading at a loss. And yet, the truth is darker. Sometimes they do not even ask. Algorithms learn your thresholds. If enough people like you break at the same signal, the market can be timed. 2 days after the storm, the pitch. 3 weeks into the scandal, the pivot. Right before the vote, the charity gala. This precision is not malicious genius. It is competent weather prediction in a climate the powerful set. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Your counter is austere, cold mercy. You help privately and precisely where evidence, not pageantry, justifies it. You do not place your conscience on a stage for applause points. You deny the middlemen who tax your pity. You move quietly because quiet is hard to price. When sentiment markets cannot predict you, they cannot capture you. When they cannot capture you, they move on. Control seeks the compliant. You become unprofitable to manipulate. Control is not a cage. It is a chorus. Sing along, and the door remains invisible. Fall out of tune, and the temperature drops. This is how dominance endures without obvious force, through expectation, through rhythm, through the soft punishments of being slightly out of step. You do not need chains when you have choreography. You know the routine by heart. Blame is personalized. Solutions are privatized. Victory is visual. The individual error is magnified until the structural incentive disappears. The hero entrepreneur replaces labor law. The influencer replaces collective bargaining. The award replaces a wage. The metrics glow, the lives dim. The handcuff is velvet, the kind you barely feel until your circulation is altered and your reach shrinks by an inch. You won't notice until too late. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Here's the part most cannot bear. Awakening is costly. Not in theatrics, in logistics. You lose the warmth of belonging. You lose the ease of phrases that win nods. You lose the algorithm's favor because you won't repeat the set lines. Work harder, mindset, gry. Tower. These ideas are not false. They are incomplete by design. They keep the frame where it belongs, on you. Power prefers mirrors to maps. But what if you insist on maps? You ask where policy begins and who funds the draft. You ask which tax code invisibly shifts public burdens into private pockets. You ask which index determines growth and why its sacred arrow never counts the cost below the line. To speak like this is to become suspicious, To demand source code is to be marked as hostile to the interface. And then the chorus turns. You are gently removed, not by argument, by absence. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Understand the psychology of the handcuff. You are rewarded with visibility when you harmonize. You are punished with obscurity when you dissent. Visibility feels like life. Obscurity feels like death. So the majority will choose a good death. They will choose applause over agency. They will choose a blue check over a balance sheet. They will align not out of fear of punishment, but out of hunger for presence. The handcuff dangles a light and names it meaning. Here's the unkind realization. Control is cheap when narrative supply is abundant. 1,000 voices repeating the same melody create an illusion of reality that is cheaper to maintain than one truth consistently funded. This is why the powerful invest in distribution, not debate. If you own the corridor through which ideas travel, you need not win the argument. You can simply let it starve outside. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Your method becomes minimalist. Fewer words, truer words. No performance. You cultivate the discipline of shutting up when the script arrives neatly packaged for your emotion. You let it pass. The invitation to rage, the invitation to pity, the invitation to declare allegiance you did not draft. Silence is not passivity. It is control over your instrument. It is a refusal to play music written to move your hands against yourself. Dawn, but not the cinematic kind. No triumphal brass, no rising sun bathed in righteous certainty, just a quieter air, the kind that lets you hear the gears turning behind the walls. Peace comes not from victory, but from comprehension. You now understand the conversion, the way feelings become instruments and instruments become ownership. You do not withdraw from life. You withdraw from choreography. Here's the recalibration. Compassion stays, spectacle goes. You keep your kindness offline as often as possible. You protect it from the auction. You develop the habit of evidence, boring, beautiful evidence, before generosity. You ask for receipts from those who claim virtue at scale. You withhold your name from campaigns that need it more than the people they claim to serve. You swap the euphoria of participation for the integrity of precision. And in that silence, the truth whispers. Your posture shifts from participant to observer, then from observer to operator. Operators choose levers, not slogans. They identify choke points where small, quiet pressure alters flow, a clause in a contract, a line in a budget, a threshold in a policy, a default in a system most never examined because it lacks theatre. You learn to move at those points. When you do speak, you name causes. When you do give, you target bottlenecks. When you do build, you build structures that make exploitation inconvenient rather than scandalous. But what if power resists? It will. The old incentives will call you back to the chorus. You will be tempted by belonging, by visibility, by the narcotic of applause. You will remember how warm it felt to be a citizen of the spectacle, admired for your empathy, rewarded for your outrage. You will carry that hunger like an old song stuck under your tongue. You will choose anyway. And in that silence, the truth whispers. You stop trying to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding. You start becoming unreadable, not mysterious for theatre's sake, but unreadable as in unprogrammable. Your patterns refuse the common inputs. Outrage bait fails, guilt trips bounce, praise does not seduce. You are courteous, you are precise, you are boring in public and effective in private. The system is not built to handle this shape. Its tools measure heat, not quiet. You grow colder, which is to say you grow calmer. Here's the last admission. Power over others is fragile. It constantly requires stories, spectacles, enforcement. Power over self is the only stable form because it requires nothing from the world. It is not glamorous. It does not photograph well, but it cannot be confiscated. Cold mercy is this power wearing a human face, choosing to help without needing to be seen, choosing to build without needing permission, choosing to withhold attention when attention would only feed the very architecture that drains meaning from our acts. And in that silence, the truth whispers. You are not the hero of this film. You are its witness. Witnesses are dangerous to illusions because they do not need them. They prefer fog to theatrics, ledgers to slogans, posture to performance. When enough witnesses appear, the choreography stumbles. The chorus misses a beat. The handcuff loosens not because it is unlocked, but because the wrist is withdrawn. The game continues, but you are no longer on the board where you can be easily moved. You return to compassion, now unleveraged by others. You return to intelligence, now unnarrated by architects. You return to money, now a tool rather than a script. And slowly, without fanfare, your life turns from being used to being useful. And in that silence, the truth whispers. If you've come this far, you've felt the pattern under the fabric, the way feeling is priced, the way stories are shaped, the way mercy is turned into margin. Tonight wasn't about cynicism. It was about clarity, the kind that lets you keep your heart without letting anyone lease it. Most will turn away from this. It's easier to love the mirror than to read the map. But you didn't turn away. You stayed. You listened to the quiet math beneath the noise. You saw how leverage is built from sentiment, how design outlives intention, how illusion prefers applause to change. So stay with us. So not for spectacle, for sight. Stay because awareness is a discipline, and practiced together, it becomes a refuge. Stay because the more unreadable you become to the system, the more human you become to yourself. Subscribe, not for content, but for continuity. For a circle that protects attention from purchase. For a small, persistent rebellion against choreography. If you're ready to keep seeing through the soft words and neat endings, step into the silence with us. We'll be here, quiet, precise, unhurried, refusing the leash, learning the levers, and choosing clarity over comfort.